Prairie Yard and Garden is a production of the University of Minnesota Morris in cooperation with Pioneer Public Television. Funding for Prairie Yard and Garden is provided in part by Heartland Motor Company, providing service for over 30 years in the heart of truck country. Heartland Motor Company, we have your best interest at heart. Farmers Mutual Telephone Company and Federated Telephone Cooperative, proud to be powering ASERA. Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien, in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. Shalom Hill Farm, shalomhill.org. Diamond Willow Advanced Care Assisted Living, providing custom homes with smaller settings designed especially for high care needs. And the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008.
When we think of a park in Minnesota, we think of trees, grass, flowers, and water. Today we're going to visit a park that has all those things plus many more. This park is not well known to many people, but it has played a very important part in the history, settlement, and legacy of our state. I'm Mary Holm, host of Prairie Yard and Garden, and let's go visit and learn about a special place called Quarry Park. Some time back, I was visiting with a friend named Gary. He loves to go bicycle riding, and one of his favorite places to ride is Quarry Park near Waite Park in St. Cloud. Tom and I have lots of relatives who live in the Twin Cities area, and we have driven near this park for 30 years and never knew it existed. In doing some research, it turns out this park is very important to Minnesota's history. To learn more, I contacted Caitlin Carlson of the Stearns History Museum. Welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you, Mary.
How did Quarry Park get its name?
Quarry Park got its name just from all the quarries that are here. Citizens of Stearns County came here for recreation many years before it was Quarry Park, and I think they called it 100 Acres Quarry for a long time before it actually became officially Quarry Park.
So what kind of stone was mined here in the quarries?
Basically granite was the big driving force in Stearns County and the other two counties, Benton and Sherburne County. So that's why they call us the Granite City, because it was all about granite.
Okay, well, when was the first mining done or started here in this area?
So the Midwest kind of opened up for settlement in about 1850. The first big quarry that we know of that was here was called the Breen and Young Quarry. That was kind of in the eastern part of St. Cloud, but by the Reformatory. That opened in 1868. So that's really the first. They had to wait until the railroad came to St. Cloud, and so that's really when it started here.
What were some of the first uses for the granite that was mined?
So granite at the beginning, before technology kind of allowed for all these other uses of granite, was used for a lot of foundational things, foundations for homes, bridges, paving stones, things like that. So nothing too fancy or decorative at first, but it's a very sturdy, one of the heaviest stones there is, and so they used it for purposes of structure and foundation. So, however, Stearns County granite eventually formed a reputation for being particularly harder than some other granites that were in the area or in the country. And when polished, the colors were pretty unique in Stearns County. Of course, they didn't discover that until later on when polishing became, a big thing. But it eventually became a very distinct, unique, and popular type of granite. So
how did that affect the settlements around this area?
It just drew a lot of immigrants to the area, particularly from Scotland, Sweden, Finland to a lesser extent, but it brought people here that wouldn't have otherwise come here. And they were able to build these granite companies, but it also appealed to just stone workers, mobile stone workers who were just looking for work in America. So it really was a draw for immigrants in particular. And, you know, with big companies like that comes support businesses like blacksmiths and people willing to sell and market this granite. And so it just kind of grew an industry in St. Cloud where it was just kind of a pretty rural and slow to develop community at that point. But it grew really fast, especially around the turn of the century, turn of the 20th century.
So did some of the communities end up being quite ethnic people as the Scots would settle in one place and the Norwegians in another?
For a time, I believe so. There was a little area in East St. Cloud that they called Swede Hollow. I know there's a Swede Hollow in the cities too, but there actually was a small Swede Hollow in St. Cloud where a lot of Swedish mobile stoneworkers. There was a Swedish-owned granite company there for a while, but it also just kind of attracted those mobile people that were just looking for work. So,
well, I had read at one time that I think, wasn't this even one of the largest granite producing areas in the whole United States?
I believe so, yeah. It was kind of the main industry from the turn of the century until after World War II, even after going through a period of, you know, the Depression where it was hard to scrape by. There was actually kind of a resurgence. There were like 30 quarries at the time, but you know, it's kind of faded since then. But we still have, Cold Spring Granite is one of the biggest granite companies in the world. Cold Spring Granite was actually founded by Henry Alexander, who was from Scotland. He formed a quarry. It was originally Rockville, but then he moved to Cold Spring because Rockville was kind of monopolized by a different company at that time. And so they found a lot of success in Cold Spring, and eventually they condensed Cold Spring to one word, Cold Spring, and that's how they're known today. And they have quarries in Canada and other countries and other parts of our country as well. So,
how did they get the granite out of the ground?
It was hard work. So dynamite was involved, explosives were involved to free that granite from the bedrock. That was kind of the first step. Then they would have to use these massive derricks in order to hoist these loaves of granite over to the finishing sheds, where they would then hand chisel holes, a line of holes into the granite, the loaves of granite, and then they would use a technique called the plug and feather technique, where they inserted two stone feathers, and then a plug in the middle, and then they just whacked at it with sledgehammers until they split it. And then you go on to the polishing stage, which is a whole other thing. So it was back-breaking, extensive work until technology came along and kind of, you know, development of power tools and electric tools that you could polish it to look very beautiful. It took until the advent of those tools to really see how the colors could stand out, and that's kind of when graves and monuments became really popular and obviously made more available to more people because it was cheaper once you didn't have to rely on very slow and tedious handwork. But yeah, the technology really helped in opening up other uses for granite.
Well, thank you. This has been so interesting. I'm going to go see if I can find Ben to tell us a little bit more about what Quarry Park is all about now.
Yep, he can do that.
Caitlin said that I should talk to you when I find out a little bit more about the natural resources here at the park. So can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ben Anderson. I'm the Stearns County Parks Director. I've worked for the Parks Department about 5 years. I manage 16 parks and 3 recreational trails, Quarry Park being by far our gem of our park system.
When did Quarry Park become part of the Stearns County Park system? I assume it was after the quarries closed?
Yeah, so the quarrying started in the St. Cloud area around at least within the park area around the 1900s, and were active through the mid-1950s. From the mid-1950s up until 1992, the locals used the park for swimming and recreation, unofficially trespassing per se. In 1992 is when the county purchased the first 220 acres of the park. From 1992 to 1998, they worked on the development aspect of the park, creating a master plan, taking public input, what would the people like to see out here, swimming, trails, things of that nature, and in 1998 is when the park officially opened to the public. Quarry Park in total is 683 acres in size, but really the northern 220 acres is where all the recreational fun happens. Quarry Park boasts around 20 different quarries, and they vary in what you can use them for.
Okay, so after the rock has gotten taken out, do they all fill with water?
Most, at least within Quarry Park, have. However, there are a few that range from that about 2-foot depth of water to our deepest, which is about 116 feet deep.
Does that water stay really cold when it gets that deep?
So as you go down in the water column, yes. However, the swimming zone, in which we call it here, which is about the 5 to 6 feet under the surface of the water, stays very similar to the area lakes.
So do you allow swimming in all of the quarries?
No, we don't. There's 2 quarries within Quarry Park, quarry number 11 and quarry 2, which we allow people to swim in.
What are some of the other activities that people do when they come here to visit?
We have a mountain bike trail. You can ride your bike on any of our trails throughout the park. You can hike, walk, trail run, snowshoe, cross-country ski in the winter. We actually have 4 miles of lit cross-country ski trails.
Are there any fish in some of the quarries too?
Yes, 7 of the quarries are stocked with trout. We have a partnership with the Minnesota DNR, and they stock rainbow trout every spring.
Do people need to have permits in order to be able to come in and go fishing and go swimming and do some of the other things too?
The only permit that we have to get into the park would be a parking permit. Anybody can walk or ride their bike or take the bus to the entrance, and it's free. But otherwise, if you want to drive and park your vehicle, it's $5 a day or $20 for an annual permit. The only other permits that we have in the park are for rock climbing and scuba diving. There are 3 quarries within the park that you can scuba dive in. You have to be a certified diver and you have to have our permit. You can also rock climb in the park in one specific location. You have to provide all your own equipment for those activities, and there is that liability waiver that we asked. Permits are free for rock climbing and scuba diving.
Okay, so if people want to do this, do they contact you ahead of time, or when they come, can they get those permits too?
Both. So during the summer months, we have a gatekeeper that staffs the little house right when you come into the park. They can obtain permits from them, or they can come into the park office. We also have an online version if people are coming from the metro and are going to be here before, say, our park opens or coming on a weekend or something like that.
So you actually have quite a few people that come from the metro area?
Yeah, we see about 1/3 of our users here at Quarry Park that come from the metro area.
Ben, how do people find out about Quarry Park?
So really, it's been kind of driven by social media. Our biggest user group is really kind of the age 16 to 25. So the social media aspect, and over the last 4 or 5 years, has really picked up the park's popularity.
I see that there's some equipment that's still out here. Who owns that equipment?
The Stearns County owns the equipment. Our kind of gem of our equipment that we have here is the Liberty Derrick. The Liberty Derrick is an old style crane made out of 2 wooden timbers, a mast and a boom, that are each 85 feet in length, and in its prime was capable of lifting upwards of 20,000 pounds.
Do you still use that at all?
We do. We try to operate at least 2 times a year.
Wow. Well, this is such a beautiful park. Just even from the little that I've seen, would you be willing to show us some of the special places here in the park?
For sure.
I have a question. What kind of ornamental grass can I grow in the shade?
Well, most ornamental and native grasses are really good to grow in full sun, but there are a few for the shade conditions. And these tend to be shorter grasses. They're grasses that will tolerate a lot more moisture. So the first one I'm going to recommend is Hakone grass. Now this is a grass that's native to the forest in Japan, so it's native to the woods. It likes moist conditions, and shade is really good for it. It won't grow very well in full sun in our Minnesota climate. There are 3 different kinds of Hakone grass: the totally green form, a yellow stripe form, and then a form called all gold. All 3 of these are great grasses for the shade. Another kind of grasses are sedges, and sedges look just like grasses, but there are many sedges that will grow really well in the shade. So the blue sedge is a low-growing sedge, less than a foot tall, great ground cover in the shade. It will tolerate a little bit more sun than Hakone grass does, but it will tolerate heavy clay soil, light sandy soil. Both of these grasses, Hakone and blue sedge, have rhizomes, but the Hakone grass is very slow to spread. Blue sedge grows much more vigorously, so you might be careful where you put blue sedge. But both blue sedge and Hakone grass are great grasses for the shade.
Ask the Arboretum Experts has been brought to you by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum in Chanhassen, dedicated to enriching lives through the appreciation and knowledge of plants.
Mary, here we are at Quarry 11. It's our family-friendly swimming quarry. It was developed in 2015 with a state legacy grant in an effort to bring a more family-friendly atmosphere to the park. That's why we have the sandy beach. We have a little bit smaller rock formations, about a 10-foot jump off into the water. We have a swimming platform, and then we also have the swimming rope, which helps delineate where the deep water is versus the shallower water. We always recommend that you're either a really strong swimmer or you have some sort of life jacket or flotation device, and that you pay good attention when you're out here swimming.
So once you get past the signs, the water is much, much deeper?
Right, so the buoys out here indicate a significant drop-off where it goes to be from about 3 to 4 feet straight down to 20 feet deep. This quarry in total is 50 feet deep, which is about out wherever the jumping area is.
My goodness. So when this was built, did you guys have to install the sandy beach area here too?
Yes, so we removed a few trees to create this open area along the beach area here, just to create that easier access into the water in comparison to our other swimming quarry, which is pretty much you have to jump in if you want to get into the water.
So you have 2 swimming areas here?
Yes, quarry number 2 is the original, and that's 116 feet deep at its deepest point, and boasts a little over a 20-foot jumping area.
My goodness. Now you had said something about that the water isn't very cold but I would have thought it would be really cold with that deep.
Right, we find within our, at least within our water surveys, that the water temperature stays very similar to the area lakes, within a degree or two, at least within the 5 to 6 feet below surface. Once you get further down, yes, it gets a lot colder.
And then do you have a lifeguard on duty here during the busy times or on weekends at all?
No, we do not. It's all swim at your own risk.
Well, it looks like it's a beautiful area. I just like to get in there and build a little sand castle here because it's really nice. I bet you have a lot of people that come to visit.
Yes, it's very popular. Our busiest time of the year at this park is Memorial Day through Labor Day. We see about 150,000 visitors. A third of them come out of the Twin Cities metro area. It's just a great place to come and enjoy and cool off from the summer heat. Here we're at a patch of prickly pear cactus, the brittle prickly pear. A lot of people don't know that here in Minnesota we actually have our own cactus. It's a rock outcrop specialist, which is what drew some of the early settlers to this area, is that they could see the granite outcrops here throughout the park.
So does this bloom here?
Yes, it blooms around late June, a really nice showy yellow flower. Mary, there's also lichens that form on the rock outcrops, and they're an organism that get really vary in color throughout the park. And essentially why they're important is that scientists can actually take the lichen themselves and use them to pull out data on pollutants in the air. So they actually can absorb like mercury and things that are in the air into the plant, and scientists can use that to then delineate how much pollutant there may be in the air. They're also really good at converting carbon dioxide into oxygen.
Do you have research projects that are ongoing, or is anything here at the park used for scientific study?
Yes, actually right now we're working with the University of California, Berkeley. They're out here doing a specific study on the diabase rocks within the park. And essentially they're dikes or veins of dark rock that run in the granite. They're looking at them to hopefully connect what the location of the North American continent anywhere from 1.1 to 1.7 billion years ago.
Wow, that's really interesting. Can we see another area of the park?
Yes, we can. Mary, here we're at one of our many natural resource features here at Quarry Park in the Prairie. And Stearns County falls in a unique situation in terms of the whole U.S. as a country, in that we fall in the transition zone from the deciduous forests of the east to the tallgrass prairies of the west. So prior to European settlement, most of this area here in central Minnesota was more likely an oak savanna type habitat, which incorporates some lightly treed canopy areas with more so oaks, which are more fire dependent type species. And then you also get your more open areas with the prairie like we see here.
How do you maintain this?
So all of our prairie areas we maintain on a rotational prescribed fire, which means we come in and we burn them. We intentionally set fire to them because they're a fire dependent ecosystem. The native grasses and forbs, which are flowers out here in the prairie, have really deep roots, anywhere from 3 to some go down to 30 feet deep into the ground. So they persist in this fire dependent habitat.
When you do a prescribed burn, how do you keep from burning the trees?
So actually we want to burn through the trees when we're doing prescribed fire. Aspen in this area specifically has been encroaching in on the prairies, and if you don't have some sort of disturbance to keep that back, it's just going to continuously overtake it. So you can look at it like you're haying a field, continuously cutting it. Your woody species don't tend to encroach in on those fields. So we use fire in a similar way.
How often do you burn this?
About every 3 to 4 years.
Okay, then you must have to have a lot of people close by to watch when you do that.
Yeah, so we have 6 of our 7 full-time staff that are trained, that have taken the wildland firefighting courses, and then we also use some volunteers as well to help us out.
And then do you do the burns in the spring or in the fall?
Well, it's a little tricky. Most of ours actually get done in the spring, which isn't always the best for the woody encroachment time. Fall is typically before the trees put all their nutrition back down into the roots, but a lot of it just comes down to when we have the time and when we can get it done.
Okay. Well, this is really interesting, and I noticed that right out here there's an oak tree kind of in the middle of this. Does that get hurt when you burn?
No, so the oak trees are fire resistant in that their bark is a little bit thicker, so they're more tolerant to the fire moving through, whereas the aspen has a thinner bark and therefore is less resistant to the fire.
So when you burn this, how long does it take until it looks nice again?
1 rainfall.
Really?
Yeah, they'll start greening up almost instantly after we get that first rainfall. Yeah, Mary, this is just one of many natural areas here with the prairie within the park. Why don't we take a look at one of the wetlands here that we also have?
That sounds great.
Here, Mary, here's our wetlands that we have as part of the Quarry Park and Nature Preserve. They're really a unique aspect to the park in that they kind of serve as a sponge for the area. They capture water slowly, and then they also allow that water to slowly seep into both the groundwater that we collect our drinking water from, but also into our lakes, rivers, streams, and such.
What is this thing that we're standing on?
So this is our floating boardwalk, and it's a way for us to allow water to move and persist in this area, but also get people across it over to our most significant swim quarry. It's a little over 320 feet in length.
Wow. Do you have to take this in the wintertime?
We do not. It stays out here 365 days a year, so it'll actually freeze into place, and it allows walkers and such, and we actually groom cross-country ski trails right alongside of it.
Okay. Well, I noticed when I stepped on it that it moved, so.
Yeah, depending on the time of year, it fluctuates, but it naturally does so. We don't need to do any manual. As the water rises, this whole dock rises, and as the water falls, it falls with it. So there are some times during the year, if we get a drier year, where this will actually all be sitting just on the bottom of the wetland.
Really? That's what I was going to ask about, if you have to raise or lower it when we get a big rainfall.
Nope.
Then do you have to do maintenance on this too? Since it's setting in water, does it tend to rot easily?
So this, what we're standing on right now, is 20 years old. So it was put in when the initial park was opened in 1998. So this year, the first year, we did budget some dollars in to do a facelift, essentially, of it. So it's held up very well for getting 20 years. We have replaced a board here or there, but overall, it's done well.
It's really fun to walk on, actually. I noticed that there are piles and piles of rock here in the Quarry Park. Why so many piles?
So actually, when they were doing the quarrying between the 1900 to the 1950s within the park here, a lot of times the client was asking for something specific. So say they wanted a black speck in a piece of granite not to be larger than a dime. If there was anything larger than a dime, it just got discarded on the piles. And it was upwards of 80% of what they were actually taking out of the quarries that was just discarded into these piles.
That's really interesting. And so then the piles just kept building and building.
Building and building, and we got our Stearns County mountains.
Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful park with us. And I just appreciate getting to see all of the diversity that you have, the different areas, the natural resources that are here.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Funding for Prairie Yard and Garden is provided in part by Heartland Motor Company, providing service for over 30 years in the heart of truck country. Heartland Motor Company, we have your best interest at heart. Farmers Mutual Telephone Company and Federated Telephone Cooperative, proud to be powering ASERA. Mark and Margaret Yankel-Julien, in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. Shalom Hill Farm, shalomhill.org. Diamond Willow Advanced Care Assisted Living, providing custom homes with smaller settings designed especially for high care needs. And the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008.